we have members and representatives from the Nikolai Joda Foundation. And the foundation is a nonprofit that works with the National Avalanche Safety Center. And they're all about trying to educate kids about avalanche safety and awareness and how to get out in the mountains and appreciate them, but also know how to travel safely. And I know we have all kinds of cool kids in this group who like to get out in the snow, or who might be interested in learning how to get out in the snow more. And one of the things that we talk about in some of my classes is if you're going to go out in the backcountry, you have to know how to do that safely, because when you don't, you're not just putting yourself at risk, you're also putting anybody who has to go out there to help you if you get in trouble at risk. So we're really excited to have this presentation to kind of give you guys some foundation on what to think about. So I appreciate you guys giving your full attention to our presenters, and if you have any questions, there'll be some time at the end if there's specific things that you want to learn more about. Okay. Excellent.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome. So we're going to get going here in a second, and what's going to happen for the next hour or so, we're going to watch a movie for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to have a little bit of like a slideshow presentation. If you guys have questions, fire them off. It'll be really, hopefully fun and interactive. But before we get going, I'd like to try one thing. Can I get everybody to raise their hand? Everybody should have at least one hand up in the air. Now, if you snowboard, put your hand down. Okay, and if you ski, put your hand down. If you've been snowshoeing, put your hand down. If you do snow angels, put your hand down. If you have ever been in the snow before, put your hand down. Awesome. So everyone in this room is the right person to take part in this. Right? So this applies for everybody. And we're going to get going.
Avalanches don't discriminate. They're equal opportunity killers, and they affect everyone in the mountains. Whether you're snowboarding, skiing, snowmobiling, sledding, cross-country skiing, hiking, snowshoeing, extreme snow angeling. If you live close to snow-covered mountains, you need to know about avalanches. It really just goes with the territory.
Everyone's really excited. A fresh storm had just come in and dropped over 2 feet of new snow. There's blasting rock and roll music, and you get to the exit point. So Mike was finishing his ski cut, and instead of waiting, he just charged right into the slope. And in his first turn, a huge rooster tail of powder came up, and everyone in the group started cheering, "Yeah, go get it!" And then in his third turn, we saw the slope just start to crumble completely. Your heart just sinks because you realize we just screwed up big time. Even though, you know, you've got this organized rescue and you've got people getting to him within 15 minutes, you don't always get that luck that you're gonna get down there and everything's gonna work out all right. Some of the medical staff initiated CPR, but about 40 minutes after the avalanche had occurred, they had ruled his time of death. After the accident, when we were driving home, I thought, those 3 turns, that wasn't worth it.
Avalanche accidents are so tragic because they affect the entire winter community. I've personally experienced what it feels like to lose friends in an avalanche accident, the devastating ripple effect it has on everybody in the community.
What is an avalanche? There's a lot of different kinds of avalanches, but the kind that causes the most trouble are what we call dry slab avalanches. A slab avalanche is like a monster in a horror film. It lies underneath the perfect facade, this enticing powder, and it's just waiting for a trigger to come along, like you, to collapse that weak layer, and then that collapse just goes outwards in all directions. The slope just shadows like a pane of glass. There's no escape. It rockets down the hill, bounces you off trees and rocks on the way down, tumbles you over a cliff. I mean, does any of that sound dangerous to you?
I was not aware, and I did not comprehend the dangers that were out there that day. When I triggered the avalanche, it wrapped me up immediately. Not a second later, I was hit in the back with what felt like a truck. Didn't even have a chance. I ended up laying there in the snow with 2 broken femurs and my broken left arm for between 7 and 8 hours. I've had a total of 4 surgeries, still in therapy 3 days a week, trying to learn how to walk again and get use of my body again.
Avalanches are very violent events. 1 out of 4 people are killed by the trauma of hitting trees and rocks on the way down. And after they tumble you to the bottom, then the avalanche debris instantly sets up like concrete. You can't just pop up out of this. Somebody else has to get you out of the snow.
Really fun day. It was beautiful powder snow, blue skies, sunshine, just pow shots, nothing extreme. We weren't trying to get gnarly or anything. Came around the corner, dropped in. It was great, and then saw cracks shoot out all around me. I did see like the sky for a moment, and then just a whole wave of snow went over my face. I had like a moment of, maybe I can just punch through to the top, and as soon as I tried to move at all, I realized that I couldn't even bend a finger.
The most important avalanche skill to learn is how to read avalanche terrain, which mainly means judging slope steepness. Almost all avalanches occur on slopes steeper than 30 degrees, but you know what? When the snow is sketchy, we can still have lots of fun playing on mellower terrain. We just want to make sure we're not on, underneath, or even connected to steeper slopes. The bottom line is the only time we should even consider getting into steep terrain is when we have safe avalanche conditions.
Some slopes are going to produce much worse outcomes should they avalanche than other slopes. For example, if you're above a bunch of trees, rocks, cliffs, or you're going to get washed into a lake or a gully, the outcome of getting caught in an avalanche like that is much worse than if you're in some big wide open meadow.
The difference between riding in a ski resort and riding in the backcountry is really night and day. In a ski resort, we use explosives and terrain closure to minimize the risk of avalanches to our customers. But outside the ski area, once you step just 2 feet over that rope line, you're in a totally different environment.
Anybody that's going into the backcountry or thinking about going off-piste at a resort really needs to understand that it's a totally uncontrolled environment. There isn't any ski patrol, they're not bombing or doing any avalanche control. It can be really dangerous. So essentially you need to be, your own avalanche expert.
So in 9 out of 10 avalanche fatalities, they're triggered by the victim or somebody in the victim's party, which is actually good because it's not like getting struck by lightning. We have a choice. That means if we learn something about avalanches, we can avoid getting caught in avalanches.
Avalanche safety can seem totally overwhelming, but there is a systematic step-by-step process that can keep you alive in avalanche terrain. Just knowing 5 basic things can prevent most avalanche accidents. Get the gear, get the training, get the forecast, get the picture, and get out of harm's way.
Everyone who goes into backcountry avalanche terrain needs basic avalanche rescue gear.
You need an avalanche transceiver, a shovel, and a probe. And you need to practice a lot to know how to use all of this gear, because your friend only has about 15 minutes to live buried beneath the snow.
A lot of people also use an inflatable avalanche airbag backpack that will help them rise to the top of avalanche debris. How well does this avalanche rescue gear actually work? Well, for 1 out of 4 people killed in an avalanche, they're gonna die from trauma. They're gonna hit trees or rocks on the way down the slope. So avalanche rescue gear isn't gonna do anything for them. The rest of them die from asphyxia, from breathing their own carbon dioxide underneath the snow. But it doesn't have to be that way.
If everyone wore an avalanche airbag backpack, as well as an avalanche transceiver, 2 out of 3 people who die from asphyxia would still be alive.
The bottom line is, avalanche rescue gear will only save about half of us. But in order to stack the odds in my favor, I make sure to never go skiing without them.
As sledders, we travel in the backcountry a little bit differently than skiers, but I still need to have my avalanche gear attached to my body. Having it attached to my tunnel does me no good. If I get separated from my sled, I get separated from my safety gear. If your buddies that you ride with don't have the training and the equipment, don't let them ride with you.
So now that you've got the gear, you've got to get the training. So when you take an avalanche course, you're basically getting keys to a whole new world. You'll learn about avalanche terrain, snowpack, weather, rescue. Essentially, you're trying to take the guesswork out of travel in avalanche terrain.
As a first timer just coming in, it's really important to take the right classes and gain all the knowledge before going out in the backcountry.
Getting the training isn't just taking an avalanche class. It's a great start, but really it's about practicing what you've learned. Make it a ritual. Make it fun. Throw down some lunch money and do some time drills. When it comes down to it, it's about having your friends back and knowing that they have yours.
It's not just the skiers that need to get the training, because sleds are taking us further into the backcountry, so we really need to bring our avalanche skills up to the level of our riding skills.
Next, you gotta get the forecast. These avalanche forecasters are pros. They're gonna tell you everything you need to know. They're gonna tell you about the snowpack. They're gonna tell you about the weak layers. They're gonna tell you where avalanches are gonna happen, where you can likely avoid avalanches. All that information is one click away.
To get the avalanche forecast, visit avalanche.ca in Canada or avalanche.org in the States.
Before I even get on the snow, I check my local avalanche advisory.
So take the time, get the forecast.
When you're traveling in the backcountry, you gotta get the picture. What's that mean? It means pay attention. Look for recent avalanches. Listen for cracking or wumping that's taking place around you. Look for recent storm snow, wind-loaded snow. Look for rapid thawing. If you look for all of these things, you're gonna get the picture. You're gonna be a safer backcountry skier.
You get out of harm's way in the backcountry by first avoiding suspect slopes and terrain to begin with. We don't want to regroup in avalanche paths, and we don't want to stop or regroup in runout zones.
Some of my best advice I can give you is when we're out hill climbing and there's a bunch of us, don't go park right at the bottom in the avalanche path. Park on the outside, stay out of harm's way.
Just like you ski a slope, one person at a time, once you're at the bottom, get out of the way of the avalanche path.
We want you to realize that avalanches are dangerous, but you can avoid getting caught in them. First, get the gear, but then you've got to get the training before ever going into the backcountry. Next, Always check your local avalanche forecast so you can anticipate the given avalanche conditions for the day. You can get the picture by looking for the obvious signs of instability, and you'll be getting out of harm's way by managing your exposure to potentially hazardous slopes.
A lot of times when people watch us in the films, all they see is the action of us shredding these big lines. But what you don't see is the behind the scene, all the prep that goes into making sure that the slopes are safe, checking out the snowpack, waiting for snow to settle, doing all the homework it takes to safely rip the big lines.
All this information is great and incredibly practical. But at the end of the day, if you feel uneasy about something, it's about having the courage to say no and walk away. The mountain isn't going anywhere.
It doesn't matter if you've made thousands of good calls. All it takes is one bad call, and that's one too many. Some days the mountains are screaming, get out of here, and some days the mountains are going, come on in, it's time to party.
Someone grab his arm.
What do you do when you're in a tree well? Remain calm.
Someone hold on to him.
Snow is going to come in on top of you, and don't move. Just try to grab a branch, keep your airway clear maybe, and don't pee your pants. And when the gallons come in and start trying to shovel you out, what direction are they going to shovel from? Downhill. Look at the open spaces between the trees, not the trees themselves. And that's the public service announcement from CMH Husky Monashees. Thank you. Awesome. So, tree wells, who is new to that idea? Who's never seen that before? Yeah, right, so it's interesting. People get really worried about things like avalanches, but tree wells are pretty dangerous as well. And tree wells, falling into tree wells, that happens inside of ski resorts, right? So even if you just go into the ski resorts, you're like, I don't worry about avalanches that much because I'm inside of ski resorts. We still have to be worried about tree wells. And if just based on what we saw right there, how could we avoid being caught in a tree well? Yeah.
Not going
Yeah, so don't go near the trees. Try to stay away from the trees. Don't be uphill of the tree, for sure. And if we were to, how was our friend Chris able to get out of that tree well? His shovel team. Who were his? Who made up his shovel team?
His people he was with.
Yeah, his friends. That was not like the ski patrol. Like call the ski patrol and have them come over, and in 15 minutes we'll have our friend dug out. It's like, no, we have to be right there to dig them out. Right? We're the ones who are going to save our friends when they're involved in situations like that. Yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else we talked about? Oh, and which way did they dig? Yes, downhill. Don't dig uphill. Right? And don't dig uphill of our friends. Give them a little doorway on the downhill side, right? Awesome. Y'all are awesome. So let's go through, while I'm queuing this little presentation up, just fire off any quick thoughts you had about that movie. Yeah, just fire it out. Shout it out. Yeah? Almost or did? Sweet. So do you have any advice for other people that they can learn from? Like how to avoid that? Don't go near them. Yeah. It's so easy. All you have to do is just not go near them. What about the, yeah?
I've been in Truel before, and I have gotten out of them without a show team. You don't really, you need those sometimes, but if they're really deep, then yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we need them, sometimes we don't. Where it gets really, really difficult is if we end up, especially if you're wearing a snowboard and you end up head first in a tree well, it is exceedingly difficult to extract yourself from that, hanging upside down by your bindings. Yeah. So having friends around is definitely our best way to get out of that. Yeah, go ahead. Totally. Yep. Cool. Any thoughts about the first movie we saw, the bigger one? Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's get through this little presentation here. Who needs to know about avalanches? We talked about that. It's like anybody who goes into the snow really should know something about avalanches. Where do avalanches happen in the United States? Anywhere that we have snow and mountains, right? All of these western states have avalanches. What do you think is going to happen in this video? Yeah, send it. Send it and send it. So there's a couple of interesting things about that little video, I think. One, how far away from the road was that person? Yeah, like when they started, it's like they're probably in more danger of getting hit by a car than by getting caught in an avalanche, right? Like if you're up there, that's what you're probably more worried about. So we don't have to go that far from the road to get involved into an avalanche. So we want to be mindful of that. And at the end, was he digging himself out? He was trying, but he was locked in. He's screaming for help. He can't go anywhere. When you get buried in an avalanche, and that's a relatively small avalanche, relatively small slope, he's locked in place. He's not going anywhere. Yeah.
Do you know what category that is?
What do you mean by category? You mean like what height? Yeah, that was some sort of slab, probably this one slab. Does that answer the question?
It's like different sizes, like
like,
category 1, category 2.
So sizes? Yeah, we would call that a D2 avalanche. Big enough to injure, bury, or kill someone. How do you know about sizes of avalanches? Oh, nice. So in the U.S., 75% more or less people who die in avalanches, they die because they asphyxiate. They run out of air, right? 25% die from trauma. So there's a couple of different ways to think about that. One way is, man, just because I'm in an avalanche, I may not survive. If I hit a tree, a rock, go off a cliff, bad things are going to happen to my body and I may not survive. Another way to look at it is, awesome, if I get caught in an avalanche, if my friends can come get to me quickly, within 15 minutes, I'm probably not going to die of asphyxiation. What does asphyxiation mean? Yeah. Yeah, so like we're buried in, so we can't get fresh air anymore, right? We're running out of air. Exactly. So 3/4 of the people who die from asphyxiation. About 1/4 of the people die from trauma. So we want to be able to dig our friends out and get them out quickly. Did you hear this in the movie? Bruce Tremper said that. Bruce is a smart guy. 90% of avalanche victims are triggered by the victim or someone in the victim's group. Is that good news or bad news? That's good news. This is really, really good news. That means that if we can control us and we can control our friends, we're going to eliminate 90% of all the avalanches. It is really uncommon that we get caught in an avalanche that we didn't trigger ourselves. This is good news. So if we can make good decisions, if we can learn something about avalanches and then make good decisions with the information we have. Yeah. There were 5 points to this in that video. Get the gear. It's in order. Did anybody get a pamphlet? I think it's on there.
Oh, I know. Oh,
Get the training. Get out of harm's way. Get the picture. There's one other one. Who haven't we heard from? Yeah. Boom, get the forecast. I like it. Man, that's a lot to remember, and I am not that smart. I can only remember 3 things at a time, so I separate them out. Before I go out, I want to get the gear and I want to get the training. Those 2 things, right? And the gear is what?
Transmitter, probe, and
Yep, and we're going to call it transceiver because it does both. It transmits and it receives. That's why it's called a transceiver. And a shovel and a probe. So an airbag backpack is a great idea. They help a lot, but they are not going to keep us. You can't. I wear an airbag backpack every day I go backcountry skiing. I don't expect that it's going to keep me alive. I think it may help, but 25% of the people who die in avalanches die from trauma, right? They die because they hit trees and rocks and went over cliffs. My airbag is not going to protect me if I'm sailing over a 200-foot cliff. Right? My airbag does not protect me if I go headfirst into a tree. Yes, my friend.
Have you ever anyone that you know in avalanche?
You know, I have been in an avalanche once. It's not very much fun. It's not very much fun. And I will tell you this about it, because this is true of almost every, and I mean technically 90%, another 90% here, almost every avalanche. The story of how that accident happens could be told this way. I knew it was a bad idea to do this, and I did it anyway. And that's what happened to me. I knew I was on top of a slope, and I was like, you know, I really don't think this is a good idea, but my friends are kind of pushing me to do this. And so I did it anyway, even though I knew. If you had asked me that morning, I would have said, yep, right there we started an avalanche. And yep, right there we did it. Okay? So if there is ever a time to listen to that voice inside your head that says, oh, don't give in to the peer pressure. Even if my jerky friend is telling me that I'm not going to be cool if I don't do it, just don't do it. Because that's what happened to me when I got caught in an avalanche. So we want to get the gear. We want to have a beacon, shovel, and a probe, right? And we want to get to training, right? Feather River College teaches Area 1 Avalanche classes. Once a year, I get to come to Quincy and teach that class for FRC. I hope to see you all there someday. And then every day we go skiing, we want to do these other 3 things. We want to get the forecast, get the picture, and get out of harm's way. Let's keep going. We're going to move through this. Avalanche. You know, and let's be honest. So, you know, recently there was an avalanche incident in Alpine Meadows that claimed the life of someone. And it's a very unfortunate event. It's also a very unusual event. Like, it is very unlikely that people die in resorts because of avalanches. So most of this presentation talks about how, hey, if things are unsafe, it's a reasonable choice to go to a resort. And that's still true in spite of the recent events at Alpine Meadows. Right? It's still, when the avalanche conditions get really dangerous, I go to Squaw Valley and I ride at Squaw Valley. And I do that, honestly, with my avalanche beacon on me. So it's still, in spite of that really unfortunate and unlikely event happening, it's still a reasonable choice to go to the ski resorts. Were you going to say something? Okay, cool. Because we do talk a lot in this presentation typically about how the ski patrols can manage a lot of the hazards. Ooh, there goes a charge.
There we go. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Nice ball, yeah.
This isn't really the point of this slide or this little video in here, but you know, I hear from people all the time who are like, oh, if I was in an avalanche, I'd just ski out of it. I'm like, no, dude, you're not going to do that. Like, did you see the size of that? We're not skiing out of that. We're getting buried in it. Like, what we're trying to do is avoid avalanches when we're in the backcountry. Yeah.
So if you take the class, you get the transmitter?
You do not. You do not. Here's an interesting statistic. About 10% of all avalanche fatalities in a 10-year period happen to people who started their day in the resort and then went out of the resort. So that's like, I went to Sugar Bowl, I went up to the top of Judah, then I went out of bounds. 10% of the people in the U.S. who died in avalanches started their day by riding lifts and said to their friends, hey, let's go outside of the gates. I think that's a lot of people. Yeah.
Are you allowed to go outside the gates?
In some resorts. If it depends on if it's a gate or if it's a fence.
So if you cross it, then like a fine.
You're violating the law, at least in Placer County. Yeah, for sure. So let's say, oh yeah, avalanche terrain. What did the movie say? Where do avalanches live? Anybody over there? Yeah, so, and it's percent is something else. It's 30 is the right number, but it's degrees, yeah, 30-degree slopes. How steep is a 30-degree slope? Yeah, it's difficult, which is why we have special tools that we use to measure slope angle when we go into the backcountry. Who here considers themselves to be a intermediate or better skier or snowboarder, like in the resorts? Intermediate or better. All right, sweet. So chances are, if you're standing on top of a slope and you look down it and you say, wow, this looks like it would be fun, then it's at least 30 degrees. Like, that's my gauge. I look at a slope, I'm like, hey, is this going to be fun to ride? Yep. Oh, you know what that means? Avalanche terrain. Right? So if you're not sure, but it looks like fun, yeah, that's avalanche terrain. And if it's less steep than that, there's just not enough gravity on that, acting on that snow to get it to slide. And if it's much steeper than that, then it's so steep that the snow doesn't pile up there. Has anybody here ever skied at North Star? So the backside of North Star is just under 30 degrees. It's like 28 degrees. So to give you an idea. And if you've ever skied at Squaw, the top of KT22 is about 38 degrees. Definitely avalanche. Here's the kicker to all this, though. We're trying to be really sharp about knowing where avalanche terrain is. We don't want to just know where the avalanche terrain is and stay off of it. We want to stay off of terrain that's connected to avalanche terrain. Like, hey, I'm minding my own business. I'm being smart. I'm down here in this low angle terrain. I've got to pay attention to the slopes that are up above us. Are they going to slide down on top of us? That make sense? So once they happen, there are these things that we like to call terrain traps. And these are features in the terrain that would take an avalanche. Doesn't make it more likely to happen, but it makes it kind of more consequential if it does. So, hey, I'm in this avalanche. I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay. But, oh, I went over a cliff. I'm in this avalanche. I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay. Oh, I just hit a tree or rocks.
If you go over a cliff, are you just going to die, or is there a chance you can survive?
There's always a chance. The human body is pretty resilient, but I'm generally, if I'm going off of a cliff, I do not want it to be while I'm in an avalanche. Yeah, for sure. So there's two things that we care about. Are the consequences going to go up because I'm more deeply buried or because of trauma? And things that cause more deep burials are things like these gullies where the snow would go down and then there's like a creek at the bottom and then a slope on the other side. It's going to pile up the snow more deeply. So what would be like, oh, I'm only buried a foot under the ground becomes, oh, I'm buried 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 feet under the snow. And we don't survive that very well. Yeah?
Well, if there was a creek, you were at the very bottom of that avalanche, then you were like a little bit above just a potential
All that's good, but hopefully we're getting pulled out of the snow long before it freezes. I like the way you're thinking, for sure. So we want to look at the consequences of avalanches once they're happening. But really, how do they happen? And how they happen is we get layers in the snowpack. And every storm that we get gives us a different layer. And if the layers in the snowpack are really different from each other, we get avalanches. I like to think of it, I'm a pretty simple guy, I like to think of it as if we get a layer of chocolate fudge brownies in the snowpack, and those chocolate fudge brownies are sitting on top of a layer of Pringles in the snowpack. Those Pringles are holding up the chocolate fudge brownie. Right? You guys tracking with me there? Okay, good, I'm getting hungry. Those Pringles will hold up the chocolate fudge brownie for so long, or until we put just so much force on it. Then eventually the Pringles will fall over like dominoes, or they'll just explode and shatter into a million small pieces. And when that happens, the chocolate fudge brownie will go sliding back. That's how avalanches happen. We get dense snow that's sitting on top of weak snow. We get a dense slab of snow that's sitting on top of sugary snow. Y'all ever felt sugary snow? You like grab a handful of it, you try to make a snowball, and it like just drains right out of your hand. Yeah, that's weak snow. Those are the Pringles in the snowpack. And if we put a dense layer, like a layer of chocolate fudge brownie on top of that, that dense layer of snow is going to be the slab, and it's going to slide on the sugary snow. Yeah. Okay, there's the chocolate fudge brownie layer. There's the Pringle layer. So that top layer of snow, that's the layer that we're worried about sliding, and we're worried about it sliding on that weaker layer underneath. Does that make any sense at all?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, look, there they are, the Pringles. Oh, there's the chocolate. Oh, ripping the pow. Oh, Avalanche. All right, so before we go, we're going to get the gear, get the training. You guys, you're sharp. We already said this. We're going to have an avalanche beacon that'll look for another beacon. We're going to have a probe. And we're going to have a shovel. Right? And we need all three of these tools because the avalanche beacon, all it does is tell us where we're going to probe. Avalanche beacon gets us close to our buried friend. The probe is what we're going to hit our buried friend with. Yeah. Oh yeah. Poke me in the eye. Poke me in the eye. I don't care. Because if I have to spend the rest of my life going to like Christmas parties and explaining why I have this eye patch, but I can tell that story, oh, I'd be stoked. I'd be way more stoked to have an eye patch and be at the Christmas party than still be buried under the snow. So the avalanche beacon or transceiver is going to get us close. It's going to tell us where to poke into the snow with the giant tent pole so that we can find our friend. And then once we, once we find our friend, we get the shovel out to dig our friend out. And, oh, if we're going to leave one of those behind, which one would you leave behind? None of them. None of them. Because if you don't have the avalanche beacon, you don't know where to probe. And if you don't probe, you don't know where to dig. And if you don't know where to dig, you're not going to find your friend. Yes, sir. It could, except they're going to be like 4 feet under the snow. Yeah, they're going to be 4 feet under the snow. And we're not looking for a little beacon. We're looking for a body, right? And chances are you'll probably poke me in the gut. I got plenty of that. It's solid. It'll be okay. So poke me in the gut. Keep the probe in the snow, and then you're going to dig me out. But if you have a good probe strike, you know who you're looking for, where you're looking, it takes, on average, you have to shovel out 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of snow to get your buddy out of the snow. And if anyone right now is thinking, man, I don't know if I could do that in 10 minutes.
You're scared you are.
Yeah, right? Like, you want to have friends there to help out. Because, I do this a lot. Shoveling a ton of snow takes a lot of energy. So you want to go skiing with more than one partner, for sure. Right? And if we have to excavate out 3,000 pounds of snow to get our buddy out, that's if we have a good target. That's if you probe for him. If you don't probe for him, you're just digging into a big snow hill, hoping that you find a needle in a haystack. Here's what probing looks like, and then shoveling. Just, honestly, that person who's buried in there, they're not doing so well. Getting hit with a shovel is the best part of their day.
How accurate is the transmission? I mean, within what radius is it usually successful?
So the range?
Yeah.
The range will go to, it varies, but they go, have you ever used
Absolutely not.
You're about to. So, hold on to that. The range is about 40 or 50 meters. So that's about 150 feet. We want to get within 150 feet, that's when the signal will get picked up. And when it does, if we're searching, there's one control on there, it says, pull to search, so let's do that. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, we're going to do it. Okay. If there's another beacon that's transmitting, what's the number here?
13, I'm getting closer. 12.
Yeah, I like it. What's the number say now?
9, 8.
Okay. Where's the
Six.
light going? Where's the
This
light
way?
telling you to go?
I think I need these on for my teenagers.
Yeah.
Well, now it's telling me to go this way.
And as you go that way, what is the number doing?
It's getting bigger now.
So that's telling you I'm on the right road, I'm going the wrong direction. So spin 180 degrees.
Turn.
Now which way is it telling you to go? Okay. And now what's the number doing?
It's getting smaller.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a good thing.
Oh, and the sound just went up, right?
Yeah.
That means we're getting closer. Keep following the arrow. The light.
No, I got bigger.
Okay. It's getting higher.
Okay.
It's getting
I'm
higher.
getting closer. Okay. I don't have any lights, I just have numbers now.
So when we get under 2 meters, the lights go away because we actually have to do something different, which you learn in a rescue class. So you're doing an awesome job. At this point, how close are you?
I am 1.8.
Yeah, if I was this close, I'd get the big stick out and start poking into the snow.
So within about 2 meters.
Yeah, really will get closer maybe, but yeah, this is it.
There it is. Oh, yes. Thank
Nicely
you.
done. Awesome. What's your name?
Miss Cindy.
Miss Cindy, thank you so much. That was awesome. Thanks for being willing to dive in. Yeah, what's going on? Yeah, if the beacon falls off, you're going to find the beacon, not the person. Which is why it's really important that we wear it the appropriate way, which is either in a harness that they come with, and when you wear it on the harness, they have to be over just one base layer. So you don't put it in your jacket pocket because jackets get ripped off, and you don't put it on top of your down jacket or your fleece jacket, but whatever your base layer is, right above that.
Wouldn't it be like sort of close to the person?
Totally.
Like if it fell off, it would
Oh.
just go away.
No, because if you slid all the way down like a 500-foot long hill, the beacon would be, it would be somewhere in the line probably of where you went, but no telling if it was above, below, or how far. You'd get hundreds of feet away. Yeah. What's that? Probably.
Could you hear them when they're yelling? No?
You can, oh, you know what's really freaky? If you're under the ground, you can hear what's going on above you. But if you're above the ground, you can't hear what's going on underneath. Sound, science, I don't know. You're gonna have to have someone smarter than me about that one. Yeah. Could be a project for later. Awesome. So yeah, let's talk about other gear that we can use, because that was an awesome demonstration of how the Avalanche beacons work, right? And how close we can get a signal from that far away. We can get this close, and then we're going to start probing. I like that a lot. We can use these airbags, and airbags are awesome because they keep us on top of the surface, right? If you've ever had a can of mixed nuts at like holiday parties or something, and you shook up a can of mixed nuts, the Brazil nuts float to the surface. You ever notice that? Because they're bigger. Because they're bigger, yeah. So the airbag turns us into the Brazil nut in the snowpack. So as the snow is moving, we get floated to the surface, yeah.
But what if like you pull the airbag and then it gets popped by a tree or something?
Yeah, then if the airbag gets popped by a tree, you probably hit that tree too. And you're probably not doing very well. Yeah, so these things are not foolproof. Like, people get hurt. You know, people don't survive every time that they have an airbag. So don't go buying an airbag and expect, like, hey, nothing bad's gonna happen. This thing, the Avalanche, it's kind of old school. I'll get to you in 1 second. The Avalanche, it's kind of this old school thing that was cool before airbags. I wouldn't even worry about it. It's kind of like a snorkel, but you have to keep it in your mouth while you're getting tumbled through an avalanche. That's not very likely to happen. And you still need your friends to come find you. And then Recco. Who has ski pants or jacket or anything that has Recco on it? Reco is a radar reflector gizmo that only works in ski resorts. Only works in ski resorts. It has nothing at all to do with the backcountry because the ski patrol has a gizmo on the other side that can find you. And it's a gizmo that is not taken into the backcountry. Yeah.
So when you said about if the airbag thing were in the tree, like if it were to say attached to the backpack, then it like hold you in that spot.
It might. I have a friend who was in an avalanche, and his backpack, you know the skinny little string on the top of the little barrel lock in there? That skinny little string caught on a tree branch and held him as the snow slid out from underneath him. Enormously lucky to be alive. Yes, yeah, miracles happen. But I tell you what, relying on a miracle is not how I want to get through my backcountry skiing career. Okay? Awesome. Let's keep going. Let's see what else happens in here. Oh, you want to see an airbag go? You can tell he's having fun because he's on the snowboard. So there's a avalanche starting. He's now riding in the avalanche. I'm going to ride it out. I'm going to ride it out. I'm not riding this out. No, I'm going for the ride. And pulls his airbag. And that keeps him on the surface. That's what the airbag is supposed to do for you.
Why does it work?
Why does it work?
Yeah.
Well, so it works because it makes us bigger. So we end up being technically less dense than the snow around us, so we float. Here's the funny thing about that though, it wants to float. It wants to float all the time. It wants to be up on the surface. So if we don't use a special leg strap that locks the airbag to us, kind of like a climbing harness, the airbag goes right off your back. So there's a lot of ways, even if you have the gear, you have to know how to use it for it to be reliable. Like what would happen if we lost if our friend lost his transceiver, his or her transceiver, and they were just looking in the snow? I don't know, where are we going to look in this pile of snow to find our friend? Yeah.
So, wouldn't it just be like, sort of like a parachute? Sort of?
No, it's more like having it's like having water wings. You know, water wings in the pool. You know, yeah. It's more like that. It floats us up to the top of the surface. And here's the unfortunate reality. If we want this stuff to work, you have to practice on it. Like having the gear, I see lots of people who borrow gear and they've never used it before, and I'm like, oh, look at that, you're terrible at this. Yeah, because they don't practice it. I see people who go down to REI, spend lots of money because they have the fanciest, schmanciest stuff. I'm like, yeah, you're terrible at it because you don't practice it. I want to go skiing with people who practice using this rescue gear because we only have 15 minutes to find our friend. Right? So we have to practice if we want to be good.
Is it 15 minutes every time?
What's that?
Is it 15 minutes every time?
On average. Like,
Can it be way longer?
yeah, I mean, at 10 minutes, you know, you have something like a 90% survival rate. At 30 minutes, you have something like a 20% chance. At 2 hours, you have something like a 4% chance. So keep digging. Even if I'm buried in the snow for 2 hours, please keep digging for me. But don't expect that I think that. Yeah, what's up?
What if everybody got buried?
Oh.
Would there be a way to get out?
No. Yeah. So important lesson there. If you think there's danger in the slope, maybe only one person should be on the slope at a time. Or, even better, don't go there. Yeah. So when we go out, we said that we want to get the forecast. And you know, right here, Plumas County, we don't have an avalanche advisory, but we have two near neighbors. We have the Sierra Avalanche Center to our south and the Shasta Avalanche Center to our north. And I can tell you, as somebody who looks at both of these every day, and I work in Lassen all the time, which also does not have an avalanche advisory, I look at both of these and then I take the more conservative one and then I'm just a little bit more conservative until I figure out what's going on in my zone. So we have these resources. Each of these avalanche centers put out a daily forecast. It tells us what the danger level is, what kind of avalanche we're worried about, what the likelihood of that avalanche happening is, and what the size will be. So I'm looking at that every single day. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about danger. We have 5 scales: low, moderate, considerable, high, and extreme. Most avalanches happen when the danger level is high and extreme. Like thousands of them are happening in the woods all the time. Right? We get brief. Remember when we used to get snow? When we get big storms, and all of a sudden we just get hundreds and hundreds of avalanches that are happening. You know, we're generally not out there when it's happening. When the danger level is moderate and considerable, though, there's avalanches happening, and that's when we're out there. So even though most avalanches happen when the danger level is high, most people get involved in avalanches when the danger level is moderate or considerable. So moderate and considerable is not like, oh, it's only the middle, so therefore it's safe. Actually, it's, oh, this is the spot where most human beings are involved in avalanches. Down here, we don't have avalanches. Up here, we don't have people. That makes some sense? Can you hang on to that for 1 minute? Yeah. Cool. Appreciate it. We just said that's a forecast. If y'all get nothing else from this today, know this: that just because somebody else skied it, it doesn't mean that it's safe to ski. In some other classes, I have a great video where the 7th person who goes down the slope triggers an avalanche. Yeah, the 7th person. I don't think this is safe. I'm gonna watch somebody else do it. Okay, somebody else did it. No, I still don't think it's safe. 7 people, 7th person triggered a slide. Yeah, so just because somebody else does it, no reason to think that it's safe. So Chris Davenport in that movie was saying that there are 5 things to look for to get the picture. Anybody remember where they were? Yeah. So there were 5 like red flags. Yeah, so if we see shooting cracks in the snow, that's one. What do you mean by weak snow? Sugary snow. You saw sugary snow in the snowpack. I like it. Yeah, and listening for that. What does that sound like? Anybody heard this? Actually, the really scary sound sounds like this. That is the Pringles collapsing under the snowpack. If you are out in the meadow and you take a step and you hear boom, that's weak snow failing. Yeah.
Snow that's been blown over.
Yeah, so wind-blown snow. This is also in that brochure in the pamphlet under your seat. Recent avalanches. Hey, look, there's an avalanche. Oh, hey, do you think it's dangerous out today? I don't know. There's an avalanche happening right there. Yeah, I think it's dangerous. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Rapid thaw. What's happening in the snow when you say thaw? It's melting. So the grains of snow that are holding on to each other, when you warm them up, they're letting go of each other. So we get avalanches. Yeah, what's up? What's that? Dry slab? Dry slabs are a type of avalanche. These are the ones that we really care about because they are big. Like that's a picture of a dry slab avalanche failing. Yeah, so cracking, recent wind, new snow, and rapid thaw. Nice job, you guys. Yeah.
Like you're at somewhere like a ski resort and some people are hot, couldn't they set it off for some people that are just having family day at that spot?
They could.
Yeah, kill some people that didn't.
Yep, and that is more likely to happen outside of a ski resort than inside of a ski resort. Yeah. So hold on, so we're gonna wrap this up, and then if Then if people have the time to stick around, we can stick around and ask more questions, but I want to make sure we get y'all, anybody who needs to get out of here can get out of here. So we're going to do a quick quiz.
Yes.
Yeah? And let's see if we can give away some stuff. And then, like I said, if we have...
Can we ask the teacher to be the one to pick the boys or the girls to answer the question?
Here's what's going to happen. We're going to ask a bunch of questions. We're going to be looking for people to get answers from. And we would like your help in figuring out who's actually going to answer the question.
To be equal, like boys and girls.
Does that make sense?
We deserve it. Call it.
I'm going to ask a question.
Come on. You're helping to pick
Sure, anybody. So here's what we want to do. I'm going to ask, my job is to ask the questions. Alex's job is to hand out the prize to the winner. Your job is to figure out who raised their hand, who's going to get to give us an answer. Okay. All right. First.
The gentleman in the back.
First question. If we go outside of a ski resort, the ski patrol is controlling avalanches. True or false?
False.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, if we go outside of a ski resort, we're on our own. We might as well be in the middle of Spanish Peak. On our own. Okay. Essential backcountry gear includes what items?
The transceiver, probe, and the shovel.
Yeah, nicely done.
Pushing your hands just already up. You ready or what?
We need a girl now.
Also essential for good backcountry travel, we must have a dope Instagram account. It helps. If we want to get good information about the avalanche danger today, where would we look?
Roy.
Avalanche.org. And that would tell us what? What would avalanche.org tell us?
Where the avalanche happens the most.
What's that?
Where the avalanche happen the most.
So avalanche, I think that's worthy of a correct answer. But avalanche.org tells us where we can find avalanche advisories anywhere in the country.
Safe to travel.
Yep. So if I'm going to Montana, I can go to avalanche.org and say, hey, I'm in Montana. Where's the avalanche advisory for this one? For sure.
This has to be a girl next, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I missed that part.
Okay.
Okay.
Most avalanches occur when the danger level is.
Joey Davis' sister, whose name I can't remember.
30 to 49.
Ooh, that's the avalanche terrain and slope angle is between 30 and 49.
Think again.
Extreme and high.
Good job, Heather.
Most people get caught in avalanches when the danger level is. Nicely done. Ooh.
Whoa.
Is it boy next? Right? Yeah? Okay.
Side country is safe because there is a ski patrol.
Connor.
What if side country is safe because
Is
of ski patrol?
True or false? Side country is safe because there is a ski patrol.
It's false.
That is false. Yep. Let's see if we can. True or false? Most avalanches happen on slopes steeper than 30 degrees.
We have on this side.
What? Oh, this side. Audrey.
True. That's correct. And true or false? If I think it's not safe, I'm going to tell my friends that I think it's not safe, and I am not going to go.
Aiden over here in green. Aiden. No, hold.
You want to think about it again? True. Yeah, that's right. True, false, true, false. Yeah, in all seriousness, y'all, if you think it's not safe, say something. Don't keep it to yourself. Share with your friends, and if your friends are like giving you some sort of weird peer pressure about well, do it anyways, like, just remember, like, this is how I got caught in an avalanche. And maybe I'm just some old dude with a beard, but it happens to everybody like that. All right, last, how are we doing on prizes?
Karen, do you roll that question?
Okay.
What's trying to answer? Okay.
So, who can list all 5 red flags?
Cool.
That's a tough one.
Oh, that was hard. All the hands went up.
Yeah.
We asked it. Xander, okay.
All right, there is gear, training, forecast, go in harm, picture.
So, yes, those are all the 5 get the points. That should be worthy of a prize. That wasn't the question, though. But you should get the prize for having all 5 get the points.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So we are, I think we're, yes.
We're done with it.
Yes.
All right, so.
But you can tell them actually what.
Yeah, so nicely done. Good memory. So we're out of prizes other than the prize of being able to live a fun life and go skiing and not die in avalanches. That's a pretty good prize. So for that prize, somebody tell me any one of the 5 red flags. Rapid thumb. Anybody. Shout it out. Okay, that didn't work very well.
You got your hand. What'd you say?
Cracks and lumping sounds. Yep. What else?
Miss Davis in the back.
Recent wind. If we see snow blowing over ridge tops, it's like, whoa, we're getting slab avalanches.
Come on. Fresh snow?
Yeah, a lot of fresh snow.
Jordan, Montgomery.
Yeah. Hey, look, there's an avalanche. I think it's unsafe today. Yes, exactly. That was fun. Was that fun? I think that was fun. Nice job, y'all.